All right, so anything to ask? Any question? All right, so just to have a quick recapitulation of the story, we're talking about WTO. You have understood, we try to understand that first, what is this general agreement on trade and tariff? Why it was needed? I told you that though we wanted to have something like ITO at the Bretton Woods, but we could not develop consensus, so we thought at least something should come out, and that's how we got general agreement on trade and tariff. When we say in terms of trade, or tariff I told you is something which when you're crossing the border you have to pay additional duty that can be called as tariff, be it import or export. Trade, I told you that how internationally the trade is going between the countries at the global level, because that was the time when we got already the concept of global village looking towards global economy. McLuhan was the one who popularized the term, and later on you got that idea of what you can say globalization. So this is how, when it comes to international trade, what was needed, that we should try to make it as least distortion as possible. What kind of distortions were there? One very important was that developed countries and developing countries were standing at different positions, and there should be some kind of consensus in their differences. Second was that the superpowers were trying to manipulate the things in their favor. That needs to be neutralized to some extent. General agreement on trade and tariff tried to look at that. What could be distortion? I told you the distortion could be of two types. Either you can call it tariff barriers, that tariff barriers are made, or they could be non-tariff barriers, like other than tariff, some other kind of pressure or some other kind of manipulation is being done. When it comes to tariff barriers, I told you that for that we got a bound rate, that it cannot be more than this. This is what's called bound rates. So bound rate is something above which you cannot go. Now, beneath that, later on we got the concept like what is called most favored nation, preferential treatment, free trade agreements, isn't it? And early harvest agreements, etc., etc. Then I told you that at the Uruguay round, in 1986 to 1994, we got finally series of issues discussed that resulted in the formation of WTO. In between, I also told you that in 1964 we got United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, which was definitely a very important development for creating some kind of consensus platform. In 1976 we got Generalized System of Preference, GSP. That is something which was started by USA. Though I also told you, though we have not detailed that, that's called what is United Nations Trade Representative, USTR, and what is its significance. Now in GSP, I told you that when it comes to Generalized System of Preference, why it was important, because they started giving differential treatment, preferential tariff to their friend countries. 13 countries as of now offer this GSP. India was beneficiary, but recently US has took a U-turn with a changing political scenario. Then we have also discussed that we got WTO, finally came in existence in 1995. This WTO is having one governing council, what you can call as General Council, which takes care of day-to-day affairs of WTO. In this General Council, we have separate committees also, like there's one committee for trade barrier committee, then there is what is called committee for SAS, and so and so. So that's how we got, when we talk about various committees, there are committees for within this which take care of each and every section of it. And then there is a dispute resolution mechanism. In the dispute resolution mechanism, I told you it could be for 3 years, 3 members, and it could be for 7 members. 3 members are those which are settling the dispute between the country being neutral. If the matter is still not been solved, it can be sent to a higher bench of 7 members. So this is how we got when we talk about WTO. I told you that Ngozi Iweala, she is the current Director General of WTO, and she is the first woman Director General of WTO, and eventually the first African also. Then we have tried to understand that what are the major concerns. One of the biggest issue is what is called agreement on agriculture. Agreement on agriculture. Before that, I've also told you that they have what is called every 2 year one meeting that is called ministerial conference. As of now, it has 164 members. 164 members are there. However, in the ministerial conference, the first ministerial conference itself was Singapore, and in Singapore we got certain issues which are popularly called as Singapore issues. The major one, government procurement, trade facilitation, trade and investment, and what is called trade and competition. Labor issues were kept aside because that was a subject matter of ILO, which is already existing since 1919. I also told you that when it comes to Singapore issues, in the Singapore issues, we got a clarity that what is binding rule, what is binding coverage. Binding rule, I told you that they should be largely following it. Binding coverage is that to what extent they are following the binding rule and what needs to be done further to increase the binding coverage. I also told you that what we got, the bound rate, and how various classifications came up. Then we got agreement on agriculture. Here we seen that there are several issues. One of the very significant issues is the kind of subsidy or the support, domestic support countries are providing to the farmers, and that might distort the international trade. In this, we got 3 subsidy types. One was green subsidy, which is on research, etc., and allowed. Another was ember subsidy. This is something which increases per unit electricity, fertilizer, any kind of subsidy which is directly associated with the production can be called as ember subsidy. And it distorts it, and that's why it was said that this should be regulated somehow. Completely, you cannot call it off. That time in WTO we decided, but we said it should be regulated. And in the regulation, the consensus was made that, okay, fine, what you can do is that the developed countries are supposed to reduce their expenditure to 5% of their 1986 agriculture income, while the developing countries can go up to 10% of it. That should be the upper cap, how much they should be spending in the ember subsidy. However, in 2013 at Bali, when we were talking about all these things, it was well understood that there is still, despite the fact that they are using 5% and we are using 10%, there is still a huge gap between 5% and 10%, right? So we wanted, because in Bali the WTO wanted that trade facilitation now should be under the binding rule. That means in phase manner, now every country has to observe it. Binding rule, you understand that means now the countries have to observe it. So when they said this, we want some relaxation, and finally the relaxations was given for 5 years. The entire package was created at Nairobi to be called as Nairobi package. This agreement was called Bali Peace Agreement or Bali Peace Clause. And then we also understood that how in this ember box, though technically speaking it get expired in 2019, but the matter is yet not closed. We have to wait and watch at the next ministerial conference what outcome it might give. Then I told you that we got blue. Blue subsidy is like ember subsidy with conditions where if you are giving them ember subsidy, any kind of subsidy which increases per production, but you make a very clear-cut guideline that not more than this, or you cannot produce more than this. There are 2 ways. Either you say the subsidy will be given only for these much of units, or you can say you cannot produce more than this unit. Developed countries do follow that. That's called blue box. However, there's a 4th box called S&D box, or development box. This special differential box or differential treatment box, as you can call, or development box, is this providing some additional agriculture subsidies to developing countries, particularly keeping in terms of fisheries and other kind of things. Like I told you that Australia is now saying India is still spending a lot in S&D box, and that should be curtailed. We have made it very clear that our fishermen are very poor, and we have border issues, particularly with the Sri Lanka and in the Arabian Sea, and in some Bay of Bengal also. So keeping all these things in mind, we are providing these poor fishermen, and that should not be considered subsidy. That's more a welfare initiative. So that's how we got, the position clear. So this is how we got when we got various types of subsidies, etc. Future looks like that probably amber might be converted into blue. That, you will say that you can give subsidy, but make it restriction that per unit production should not be, or each farmer cannot have more than this, and so and so. Moreover, if you see, that's the reason why government is little in toss. When you will be reading agriculture, or when you have done, you might have heard of it. In fact, why government is, it's like, it's very difficult task to promise MSP, because that will create a complex situation. So this is how we go when we talk about these kind of boxes and WTO's stand on it. We have done this much. Then we have also, while talking about all these things, I have told you that when it comes to agreement on agriculture, at the Bali Peace Clause, one thing was also made very clear, that for food security purposes, subsidies should not be considered as amber restriction per se. So these are some of the point of reference which in the next ministerial conference will be taken into consideration wherever it happens. So this is how we got agriculture. Is that clear? All right. So if that's clear, we can move ahead. The next thing is in terms of services. That is called general agreement. General agreement in services, trade in services. Trade in services, or GATS. General agreement of trade in services, or GATS. Now, what exactly services means? Understand this point. In Uruguay, this was also major concern. Let me tell you some background. You might be knowing that, because I don't know whether you have done taxation or not yet. But when it comes to services, services earlier were not considered as something which has been produced. In fact, WTO gives a wonderful definition of services. They say service is anything which is invisible and does not fall on your leg. If you go on WTO website, they say, I think some people might say, what kind of definition is this? Because, the intellectuals want some heavy words. This is the beauty of economy. We try to explain. We don't want to use heavy words. So they say something which does not fall on your leg. You cannot see it, but it is something which has been produced and make what is called the world a better place. That's how we got this idea of services. In fact, that's why you might have heard that term footloose industry for software business. Because footloose, it's not falling on your leg. The term is coming from WTO. I think once UPSA asked footloose industry referred to. So footloose industries are nothing but the service sector. So service sector, and there are 4 types of services. Now this idea of service sector, the idea on service taxation is not a very old idea. Around 1960s, the idea for the first time came up into this on the floor. Particularly if you see in 1960s, there were some of the taxation system coming up, and as the tax reforms were going on in USA, that time the idea of service tax was proposed. If we come to India, it was Raja Chelia committee which has for the first time talked about service tax should be imposed. I'm talking about 1990s. So service tax was on the recommendation of Raja Chelia committee in India. Then Kelkar has also talked about it. You will read about these things in taxation. So it was the Raja Chelia committee who recommended service. You can say when Uruguay discussion was going on, that time service was a promising tax collection for the country, and obviously the quantum of service sector was increasing. One major reason of increasing service sector in 1990s could be the telecommunication revolution. The telecommunication revolution, because in 1993 transponders came, satellite things started, and suddenly we have seen the internet was making its mark. That's why I don't want to get that way, but I hope you are aware of Industrial Revolution 1.0 says that time when machines started. Industrial Revolution 2.0 is that time when we got this telegraph, radio, and these kind of things started. No, that is Industrial Revolution 2.0. We got mass line, that's called mass line production. As you call it now, that mass scale production was there. So we got Industrial Revolution 2.0. So automobile sector got increased, and so automation started, radio, telegraph, these kind of things came up. You can say around 1860, 1870, and then we got this streamlining coming up, right? However, third is called IR 3.0, Industrial Revolution 3.0. Industrial Revolution 3.0 was one which got triggered particularly. IR 3.0 got triggered particularly with this internet and telecommunication revolution, which was taking place in 1990s, right? Around 1993 to 97 is the time for it. This was the time when e-governance and satellite and internet, these things started. IR 4.0, we are into IR 4.0 now, Industrial Revolution 4.0, where now we are talking about artificial intelligence, big data, and these kind of things. I hope you have heard of it here and there. Sir, are they aware of this classification? All right. So IR 1.0, if not, industrial revolution are being viewed in these four ways. Industrial revolution 1.0, when the machine started, steam engine, etc. came up. Industrial revolution 2.0, when we got this, what is called automobile production, radio, telegraph, these electricity, these things came. Industrial revolution 3.0, when we got internet and these kind of things coming up, particularly around, in fact, you will be surprised to know, whenever I talk about Industrial Revolution 3.0, it gives me the nostalgia kind of thing. I still remember we were in college, and this idiot box called, I hope you're knowing that television is called idiot box. That's why they're saying smart box, smartphones. It was just to challenge that idea. Every term has a reason. I still remember very clearly that when I made my email account in 1997, that time in college, that time, across the globe, only 1 lakh people were having email ID. And suddenly, Google was not that big thing in 1997. We have heard of it. They, that they in Silicon Valley, they have started a startup and these kind of things. And look, now you cannot even imagine without Google. It looks like a magic, not a surprise. Shashi Tharoor in his book calls it mobile miracle. It was not less than a miracle for sure. The way Industrial Revolution 3.0 took place. Suddenly everything got digital and so and so. And then we got this social media, then we got faster internet, and look now we are artificial intelligence, big data, and whatnot. So artificial intelligence is something which is called Industrial Revolution 4.0. Be careful. Services became very prominent in Industrial Revolution 3.0 and 4.0 because now we got various new kind of things from software to service providing, etc. came up. Needless to say, we need to address these things properly. That's why in Singapore services were discussed, but not much outcome was there. In Seattle we discussed again. When I'm using these names, you have not to mug up. I can recall because we are discussing it several times. They're not going to ask that in which WTO conference service was introduced. It's not like that because it was already there in the Uruguay round. That time service tax had started. Service was classified separately, and WTO in the beginning itself gave, in 1995 WTO published a glossary. Now they had made that glossary on YouTube also. Wonderfully, in just 2, 3, 4 minute what's called links, they had wonderfully defined that what these things are. So service was something which was a matter of concern because every economy by that time started feeling that this is future, and those who are having a edge into that. However, when we were discussing it, one thing was clear, that services were not something which were properly regularized. So the first thing which was discussed in WTO was that for services, let's don't have binding rule as of now. That was the most important thing, that let's don't have binding rule as of now. Gradually we will have the binding rule. Like now we are saying, after Nairobi, we are saying that time has come that we should be now showing compliance to the services. These services can be divided in terms of international trade in 4 categories. These categories are Mode 1, Mode 2, 3 and 4. What is Mode 1? Mode 1 is cross-border services. cross-border services. With the faster internet, it became even possible. What is cross-border services? Like I'm here in India and I'm taking class for somewhere in USA, somewhere in any European country. Even YouTube is doing it. That's why YouTube get the idea, and country-wise they look into where you are being watched and so and so. So let's say I am operating from my country, from India, and offering my services to the clients in USA. All the knowledge, KPOs and call centers, they do that. That is cross-border services. Cross-border services, where services are across the border, labor is not moving. Understand the difference. Labor is not moving. I am offering my services in my country and offering to them. That's called cross-border services. Cross-border services. Now, this is something which is getting very prominent because most of the things are digital. And in that case, in fact, in cross-border services, there's another very interesting service which is called financial services. There are people from, what's called, say, India, and they're operating at different places and so and so. So if you see that cross-border services means when the service has been offered to other countries and, the service provider is staying in the country. What kind of rule should be there? What kind of tax? This is where now we are talking about equalization levy. This is where we are saying that we should be very careful, because this is one thing which is increasing day in the day out with a faster internet, with artificial intelligence and these kind of things. So that's called cross-border services. Second is consumption abroad. Consumption abroad. Please don't go with these fancy words, understand the concept so that you can recall. The first itself was knowledge units, call centers, etc. Call centers, etc. So that is what is called mode 1, cross-border services, which was, that was the biggest outcome of internet. The moment internet started, this was the biggest thing, that we got cross-border services. Many of them, like, say, most of the companies of America, they outsource it to India. Because in India, we had equal talented people to serve them at cheaper labor. So when they run a call center in Gurgaon, in Bangalore than Buffalo, definitely it was going to be very expensive in Buffalo. It was very, very expensive in Princeton. Then if they are operating from Bangalore, if they are operating from Gurgaon or Noida. So this move towards these kind of, and here in India we were offering, though that it was a matter of human right, and then it was said that earlier they have to change their names, but later on it was said no, name changing is not mandatory, and so and so. But we started it. However, cross-border services has been one of the biggest, you can say, blessings in those early 90s in the name of what you call LPG reforms. Second is consumption abroad. It's nothing but tourism. Tourism, let's say, I am going to traveling Romania. कहने में क्या जा रहा है? All right. कह तो सकते ही है. So I am traveling to Romania. I am traveling to Switzerland. What I am doing? I am going there. They are offering me services. Again, cross-border involvement is there because a traveler from other country is going to them. So client is from one country and service provider other country. I'm going to their country, traveling there, spending there, and so and so. That is called consumption abroad. That I am consuming in a different country, right? I belong to different country and consuming as a traveler in different country. Third is called commercial presence. Commercial presence. That is called mode 3, commercial presence. What is commercial presence? Like they can go and operate, can move their capital in that country and can operate. Like let's say Citibank came to India. After, if you see when the service provider sector increased and we got globalized, LPG came up. Citibank came to India. They started offering their banking services. Stanchart came to India. Various banks of even we have, you might have heard, if not just for information, that we have 46 foreign banks in India. 46 foreign banks in India operating. We have 12 national banks, 22 private banks, our own, and 46 foreign banks in India operating. Anywhere you might have read 44 also, that's not wrong, because 2 of them are subsidiaries, fully owned subsidiaries. But in total, 46 foreign banks are there in India. Now, in that situation, what they are doing, they are coming and operating in that country, or maybe, let's say, Tata is going and operating in some other country, as Airtel is doing in Africa, Reliance has gone to Africa, and so many, so and so forth. So you can go to your Indian corporates, that's called INC. INC is Indian corporates. They can go to other countries. Other countries, like Tesla is coming to India, has come to India, I would like to say. Tesla has come to India. Apple is now coming to India. They had made that agreement now. So because they're gradually withdrawing from Foxconn. Foxconn is where they have outsourced their things. So if you see this way, they can come to India. You can go to any other country, and in this we got one more thing coming up called network products. Network products. Network products have increased. So that's how we got, when it comes to these kind of things, commercial, so they might go, and when we got this commercial presence increased, one more thing started, that is called network product. What is network product? Anyone? Anyone that, what is this? Manu, you made my day. All right, fine. Yes, I was doing my MA that time, just for the records. So, when it comes to commercial presence, network, I have seen India, the world changing that way. I belong to that time where, we still write, we used to write letters. It might look like exaggeration, but we used to write letters, and that was one of the official things. So when it comes to commercial presence simply means, when we say commercial presence, it simply means that, companies can go and operate. Then, in the commercial presence, the matter was even more significant with one thing called network products. I'll come to that a little later. And the fourth was what is called, mode 4 was cross-border labor management. Cross-border level, let's say I'm going to any of the university in the West. I wish, let's say Cambridge say, let's say Harvard say, that said, come and discuss only this topic to our students. They will issue me some kind of, letter of appointment or letter of agreement, and that letter of agreement will be good enough to get visa on arrival. We are into that, H1B category visas has started now. We are, with various countries, we are having this kind of agreement. So, these four are the categories, mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. Mode 1 was the oldest one, cross-border services. Mode 2 is consumption abroad, mode 3 is commercial presence, and mode 4 was cross-border labor management. Let's understand one by one what are the major issues and which country wants what. Cross-border services, developing countries want to increase it, obviously, because it becomes a very good source of their revenue, like India. In fact, in India, this is declining, and that's a matter of concern, because now they found Bangladesh, Pakistan to be cheaper than us. So Bangladesh and Pakistan are getting more, our KPOs are shifting to Bangladesh and Pakistan because the labor is even cheaper there, and the infrastructure cost is even cheaper there. So cross-border services, developing countries want. Even developed countries also want, because that is something which makes their cost cutting. Their cost cutting, unless until there is a political compulsion coming. That's why when Barack Obama, it was political campaign of Barack Obama, we will move back from Bangalore to Buffalo. When he was going into the countrysides, he was saying this line that we will take Bangalore back to Buffalo again to attract voters. So, but even by and large, developed countries also want this, developing countries also want it. So this is not any dispute, perfectly all right. No country have any problem. That's why mode 1, there is no dispute per se. Mode 2, consumption abroad. Every country promotes it. We want that, The only thing is that we want that there should be some safe guidelines, some standardization. So in mode 2, we want that whenever traveling is there, certain protocols, certain procedures, certain international yardsticks should be there. In fact, we try to develop what is called tourist international standards also, so that every country at least making sure those minimal things to make sure that tourists are safe, to make, like when any tourist coming to India, America is very concerned. You'll be surprised to know, and it's derogatory to us, but we can't change it. America and many developed countries, if their own citizen come to India, they give a list of the things. Don't trust their police, don't take their water outside, only these brands. If there is anything wrong, immediately contact on these numbers. Each city almost they have their own people, and reach immediately to the what you call in a fancy word safe house. So reach to those places. They give guidelines of it. If you read any American citizen traveling to a country, these kind of guidelines are given. So they say don't trust police. That's something very derogatory, and so and so. So keeping this in mind, we want certain standardization, and in Mode 2 we are also saying our demand is, and that's very genuine, that let's make a committee. Let's make a review thing that is any country is doing anything which is indirectly hampering the traveler, traveling in one country or promoting the traveling in one country, etc., etc. But then even this Mode 2 is something where developing countries definitely have more advantage. Developing countries have more advantage because this has been found that developed country people travel more in the developing than the other way around. And when we say consumption abroad, it is not only to the tourism for routine tourism. It could be medical tourism, education tourism, all that kind of thing. I hope you're understanding medical tourism, education tourism, and so and so. Medical tourism when they are coming for medical purposes. Education tourism when they are coming for other. In fact, that's why we got that concept of MICE, that meeting, and these kind of, that for meeting's sake, if they are going to one country. China is very ahead in MICE tourism. Maybe sir will discuss in service sector that what is this MICE tourism, or might have discussed it. So MICE is about how we got meetings, incentives, conferences. And China has developed big places where big corporate houses get their people. So let's say Apple. Apple is going to have a GBM. So what Apple will do, will go to China with all big people and company employees. That will be incentive to them to promote the work culture. And China is happy because they got one big client. And additionally, whenever these professionals go to travel anywhere, 5 days they work, they got 2 days, in that they purchase a lot. So we see that our local things, what's called antique items and sovereigns and souvenirs and all these things are very common. So generally it has been found when professionals are traveling, they purchase more than someone who is a hippie and traveling here and there. So professional people, they purchase in the name of souvenirs, they purchase a lot, right? So it is a win-win situation. That's why we are having that kind of, this is called MICE tourism. A very promising sector. Bangla, in India, if you see Amar Sonar Bengal, West Bengal, then Padharo Mare Desh, Rajasthan, these are the captions. Now when Madhya Pradesh is also trying to compete with that. So these are some of the states which are working into that already. So consumption of, that's why many of the travelers you have seen going to Rajasthan, going to West Bengal or Madhya Pradesh. Even in Kerala, as they call it, God's own country. So this is how we got consumption abroad. Again, developing countries want it. All developing countries are getting benefited, provided they provide necessary security and what if we got an international guideline that will make it even better. So again, not much issue. One is very fine, by and large. Two is, again, something which developing countries are very fine with. The problem is third, commercial presence. Now, let's say Citibank comes with all its approach, with all its expertise to the India, who will like to have an account in SBI? If they are not restricted, who would like to have an account in SBI? The kind of facility they will provide, the kind of, ambience they will provide, and so and so. Serious concern. Or any big corporate hospital chain coming to India. And that's why in FDI we are very careful that in which sector, how much. This is where developed countries are unhappy on developing countries. They say that the time has come that let's make clear-cut rule. Because so far, as I told you, it was the country to decide what they want. Like we can decide how much of DI. Now they are saying, after, you can say Nairobi, developed countries are trying to build pressure on developing in WTO meetings. What they are saying is, some guideline should be here. That only accept these sectors, everywhere private sector, big MNC should be allowed. every country, developing countries is scared on this. Because if they have commercial presence, the kind of investment they can do, I'm sorry to say, but we are into a kind of trap. That trap is very visible if you go to the place like Bangalore, if you go to the place like Gurgaon. What happens? They are working midnight for overseas customer. Look at their style. What is happening? They got some earning, let's say 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 bucks as you call it. So they got that kind of earning. They got that earning. It's almost midnight when they're coming out of the office. What to eat? Welcome, KFC. Again, coming from Kentucky. I don't know what special they have. They say we have special, recipe. I really don't know, what kind of special recipe they have so that a chicken worth not even 25 rupees is being sold in 500 rupees. What you can buy? Nike. Nike shoes which you buy in 6,000 rupees or in sale never travels America. Only the headquarters is in America, right? The raw material is coming from Korea. It is made either in Korea, China, Vietnam or India. The total cost of Nike shoes might be 200 rupees and it is sold in 6,000 rupees. The rest of the money is going to USA. And eventually the stakeholders in the Citibank, Standard Chartered, Nike, you'll see they are some corporate houses of the USA. Could you see that they have this much of money so that they can make the entire system? So you eat KFC, you go to McDonald's, you wear Nike, you wear what is called Marks and Spencer, you wear Marks and Spencer. How idiotic it is this? In my country, I am purchasing cotton of Bangladesh, Marks and Spencer, and they don't make the things in India. They make in Bangladesh because it's cheaper. Labor there and cotton is cheaper. Look. I can make the whole list. It will be midnight if we are discussing that way. But example is that they can have massive investment, technological advancements, and this is where developing countries have definitely a counter argument. We want that we should be given the freedom, that how much we should be allowing. We are not against it, but gauging our own strength, our own weakness, gauging our local people, our local challenges, we will allow you in a phase manner. So FDI should be allowed in phase manner. They want, no, it should be done now, ASAP, with the clarity and so on. So this is where the dispute is coming. So commercial presence means they are funding their capital. Some books also say capital outflow. I'm using what is WTO's classification is. I've already shown you the link. You can go on that. So WTO classification is commercial presence. If any book is saying capital outflow, it's one of the same thing. Because obviously they will be sending their capital in that country so that they can make that setup. So we don't want to get into, because that will create a kind of trap, that we are earning from them and almost everything we are spending buying their products. So end of the day, they are getting benefited and our labor became almost costless. That is the line of argument many people has given. And that's why I say that creates a debt trap. Better not to into that. So commercial presence, that is mode 3, is where we have the main point of, like there we had Ember Box, here we have commercial presence. As of now, the freedom is there. But now they want there should be some binding coverage on that also. It should not be the case that any country arbitrarily decide. Like in India, we arbitrarily decide how much of FDI will be allowing in this sector. There is no say. We are not going to ask to WTO where should be. So, and there is no provision either as of now that the company can claim that, and this country is not allowing FDI and so and so. So they want, in service sector, they want that there should be commercial presence allowed. We are scared, and I think developing countries worry is not unwarranted. We really want that this thing should be done in very careful manner. It should not be the case that we are being eaten up in a way because the kind of money they have, the kind of investment they have. Look, Apple, a very a good example, because the problem is that they are having what is called network products. What is network product when we say, like Apple? Maybe the hardware is designed somewhere else. Maybe the software is designed somewhere else. Screen might be somewhere else. Packaging is somewhere else. Let me see how much of you are knowing. How many of you think, maybe I might have asked this question earlier also, that I really want you to think about it. When this Apple phone I'm saying, any idea how many countries are involved to make this Apple phone reach to you? Any idea? How many countries? A guess? All right, so 20. Abu is saying 20. Anyone would like to increase the bar or to reduce it? 12. This mobile is reaching to you having products and services including 43 countries. I repeat, 43 countries. Surprised? Yes, 43 countries. Labor and services putting together, raw material putting together. So what they are doing, wherever it is cheapest, they are picking it from there. Even packaging is done in Czech Republic because the cotton is easier and they got an industry there. So wherever it is cheaper, they are buying it from there and selling it to them, look at what premium cost. So that's called network product. So this pencil, maybe this unit is coming from one country, this unit coming from one country, this unit coming from one country, packaging some other country, assembling some other country, sold in some other country, and the headquarters is in New York where they are counting the profit. Yes, the only thing Apple does in USA is its software designing. That's it. Software designing. Rest everything, that's 43 countries. That's what is called, this is what you call network products. And in the network products, what they are doing, they are very smartly picking up the cheapest raw material and assembling and giving it to the maximum price so that, they get the maximum benefit. The best of the mangoes are going to them then. So this is the problem. And that's why commercial presence is something where the point of dispute is there. And, so this is how we got network products. Now the fourth is what is called cross-border labor management. This is another issue. Cross-border labor management is where we are saying that if a labor from one country is going to another country, like say our engineers are going, most of the IITians, they go to Silicon Valley, they go to America, they, engineers, doctors, other kind of manual workers also, many of the manual workers from Kerala, from Tamil Nadu, you might be seeing that they are in Central Asia, Middle East, and these kind of places. So if you see this way, any labor if is moving, what should be the guideline for it, those kind of things. Countries, developed countries are fighting for mode 3. We are aversive to it. Mode 4 we want should be more clearer. More clearer that what kind of facilities, what kind of rules and regulations. So this way if you see, service sector is being broadly classified into these 4 categories. Mode 1, Mode 2, Mode 3, Mode 4. And as of now, there are no clear binding rules. But now after Nairobi, they are saying binding coverage also there must be in service sector. Time has come. Developed countries are now saying, again and again that time has come. Again in Geneva, this was going to be an important issue. But let's see now what next. So they say time has come. We are very concerned that this might create a debt trap situation. It's like that, you took you fund me, you give me what is called some money, you come to me, you take my resources, and then you are selling the same product to me on an expensive. This is a very interesting thing which I would like to give an example, a contrast. Raw material taken from India, Taiwan. I'm talking about various things. Raw material taken from India, Taiwan, assembled in China, and then sold back to us on an expensive price. Profit goes to USA, profit goes to UK, profit goes to China, and so on and so forth. Clearly indicating that how some people might get benefited in the service sector, particularly in mode 3. So mode 3 is definitely a matter of concern where we want that so again, look, that's how we got when we talk about, I would like to say one thing, it's not about, we all are knowing it's, I would like to address this issue. That it's not about that what product we are using and what kind of product we are using. It's something which is a system. No individual, no, I think that shallow idea is not going to help unless and until we are understanding the root cause. It was very rightly said in Doha itself by the Chinese premier, and that's point very right, that that time China has made it very clear that if we are making the things cheaper, people would like to buy it from wherever we are, wherever we are providing them. Everyone has this right. I would like to say everyone has this birthright to use the product they like, or it's not about, but the point is, as a country we should be careful. We should be careful that our policies and programs should be made in such a way, like we had not put restriction on the Western products. We are saying let's be vocal for local. Even Prime Minister gave a very good line. I don't know why media has not picked up that line, but he said very good line on 15th August, that I know that our products are not that good in comparison to these international standards, but we gradually can incorporate them into our day-to-day life, gradually. Obviously, you cannot compromise your standards of life, which is your ultimate objective, but gradually we should be trying to incorporate it. So this is, I would like to say, it's not about any individual choices, liking and disliking. It's all about that, where we stand in terms of services. Everyone has this birthright to get the best possible facility, whatever they think. But countries, while making policies, in fact, I would like to caution you that these kind of things, this kind of clarity will help in interview. It's not about individual, or it's not about a community, it's not about a set of people, it's all about the way our policies and programs are oriented. So be a little careful about it, right? So mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. So this way, when it comes to services, we have to be very careful. Particularly mode 3 is where we want, that, it should be allowed as per our understanding, gauging our quantum, gauging our strength and weaknesses, while they say it should be allowed with some international parameters, like the way they are doing in agriculture. Mode 4, we want that there should be standardization. They are the one who is little shy. So in time you will see that the service issue is getting more significant in the debates, because this is something which is increasing, and that's why India is developing our infrastructure. In infrastructure, I'll tell you, one of the major objectives is that how to get in cash, how to get benefit in this changing world which is moving towards service economy. The whole world is moving towards service economy. In our GVA, as you know, service sector has the maximum contribution. Even in the bad days of COVID, 54% of was the GVA from the service sector, loosely speaking, as per the data. On 31st March 2021, we got this data clearly indicating that even in the COVID time, 54% was a contribution of GVA in your entire GDP. So keeping even the second quarter report which came a few days back, again showing that service sector is doing decent. We are having strength, no doubt about it. The only thing is that we want these things to be in phase manner. They are in hurry. Their companies are in hurry. They want this should be done ASAP. Mode 4 is something where, that's why you might be knowing that we are developing one corporate tax structure so that these things could be made easier further. Mode 4 is where we want. So mode 1, mode 2, not a point of conflict. Mode 3, developed countries are eager. Mode 4, developing countries are eager. As of now, binding rules are not there. We have just general understanding of safety and other things. However, as of now, countries can decide what kind of rules and regulations should be there, but gradually the binding coverage is increasing. So whatever the general rules were, they were only applicable, but after Nairobi, we are saying continuously that let's intensify the binding coverage in the service sector. I've been understanding the term binding coverage now. That means more and more regulation should be there. Yes, in fact, I think Subham's point is valid that PM has talked about fintech revolution. We have massive chances in fintech. India has that. In fact, we can serve our neighboring countries and so and so. We have that chance, but I think it's primarily because maybe they are thinking these kind of news don't have TRP, whatever. But our media, in fact, I often say, as you are saying here, uh, thankfully, Supreme Court has intervened into the matter, and Supreme Court has given guidelines now. I have been knowing that, particularly in say, security matters and other things. Otherwise, our media, in the name of reporting, can go anywhere, can do anything. We lost our NSG commando, Unni Krishnan, for the sake of media, in the name of live reporting. In the Taj Hotel, thankfully, because of that. That's why that topic, I think, is in a syllabus also. The role of mass media in internal security matters. Unni Krishnan we lost because Kasab was looking inside the location of Unni Krishnan. As you know, they were showing exactly without any delay of time. BBC, when reports any such thing, they got delay of 60, almost 60 seconds, and so and so. But ठीक है, I don't want to comment on that. The point is that yes, fintech revolution is a promising thing, which is an emerging industry. India is looking forward in service sector. So mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. Our media definitely needs some better treatment. They need some better reporters and journalists than those who are more interested in kangaroo courts, giving verdicts. That's what I hate about the intellectuals in my country. They pass verdicts. You just say the statement. You just make statement and that's it. That's it, rather than, as media does, passing big statements. Western media call it kangaroo court. So that's the problem is, but then even I think they will gradually understand this. Social media is something which might be putting some constraint on them. So mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4, that's how we got the service sector and the issues. Is that clear? Another point of confrontation in WTO is called TRIPS, trade related to intellectual property rights. TRIPS. But before coming to TRIPS, we can quickly write it. You can write about it. You can write it service sector or general agreement on trade in services. General agreement on trade in services. GATS. General agreement on trade in services or GATS. Or GATS. With the postmodern society emerging, postmodern world is a classification. With the postmodern society emerging, post-1960s, post-1960s. In fact, you might be reading here and there, 1960 is the benchmark. That's old time and the new time. That's how we say, 1950s to 1960s, because that time we got a very famous theory of takeoff stage given by Rostow. Rostow was a noted economist of USA. He gave a theory called takeoff theory. And we, after 1960s, we say the world is a new thing. And that's called postmodern world. Particularly the term was popularized in 1956 by Arthur Pante. He popularized this term post-world and post-forward and so and so. Now you can write that where services were emerging as future. Emerging as future. Further in 1990s, with telecommunication revolution, that is Industrial Revolution 3.0, with telecommunication revolution, services became the critical element of national income. Critical element of national income to many countries. According to WTO, services refers to anything anything which is not material, in bracket you can write, so does not fall on legs. So does not fall on leg. That's how the footloose term. Does not fall on legs. Material. But is integral part of improving the standards of life. Improving the standards of life. Standards of life. With telecommunication revolution, even services got global. Services got global. Even services got global. Got global. That is why WTO classifies services in following four categories. In following four categories. Following four categories. First, following four categories. First, mode 1. It referred to cross-border services. It referred to cross-border services. It referred to cross-border services. Cross-border services where service provider from one country provides services to the clients of other country. Provide services to the clients of other country. Clients of other country. Obviously with this work from home it will increase further, isn't it? Then now that they call work from anywhere, this is the new phrase, I'm sure you have heard of it. Second is mode 2. Mode 2. Mode 2. That is consumption abroad. Consumption abroad. This is where client of one country goes to other country, to get services like tourism, be it education tourism, medical tourism, MICE tourism. Then mode 3 is about commercial presence, where a company slash MNC of one country wants its commercial presence in another country. with least possible local hindrances. With least possible local hindrances. That's what exactly Twitter, Facebook wants. Least possible local hindrances. Local hindrances. And mode 4 is cross-border labor management. Cross-border labor management. Cross-border labor management. Cross-border labor management where the labor force is moving from one place to another, which may be skilled or unskilled. Can I say something in lighter note? Please don't take it otherwise. India often talks about na hum do hamare do is a population policy of India. I often say आप उसको थोड़ा change कर दो, considering mode 4, हम दो हमारे दो बाकी को बाहर भेज दो. Make them skilled enough so that they are getting jobs outside. Yes, there are countries they have human resource problem, so why not? So look, Finland, look, most of them, Scandinavian countries, they don't have human resources. So that could be a way, that's the best way to understand mode 4. We must make sure that we have skilled labor and there are rules which support it. So we are fighting, this is one thing where India and China together are very strong. This is, I think, only one place I can recall clearly where India and China don't have any dispute anywhere. Both the countries want mode 4 ASAP should be granted, because that will make sure that our labor forces are going, and both the countries have potential labor forces to serve the requirement of the entire world. So we are looking into that. Both the countries are working in their own way. In India, we are producing that kind of labor force which could be good in services, engineering, biotechnology and other kind of things. China is also preparing the supervisors and managers, that kind of thing. In fact, this was the advantage of India, I should say. I don't know, don't judge me politically, but if you ask me, one very good prime minister which I think deserve more respect than is given to him was Rajiv Gandhi. It was perhaps his vision that he introduced that time MBAs. India is a unique country where first came MBA, then came BBA. So first IMs were promoted, MBAs came, and later on we got BBA. Not a surprise, in all MNCs worldwide, in top 10, you will see at least one Indian having the key position. We are dominating the managerial section. China is looking at the supervisory, the next to manager, because they have hardworking people who can stand there for hours and so and so. So they got special focus on supervisory to create, world order supervisors. That's their new focus. So if you see this way, labor market, we have that potential. We have, human resource. We have demographic dividend. India is a young country with the demographic dividend. Up to 2041, India is likely to be in demographic dividend. That means we will have that population which can serve. And now, so keeping this in mind, mode 4 is something which could be a game changer for India. So that's how we got mode 1, mode 2, mode 3, mode 4. Now, in conclusion, you can write that the status quo, you can give kind of heading, the status quo. The status quo. Status quo. Status quo. That first. In mode 1, there is no dispute between developed and developing. And in mode 2, there are no significant disputes, except international protocols International protocols for safety. International protocols for safety. Mode 3 is the point of confrontation. Mode 3 is the point of confrontation. Confrontation. Where developed countries want binding coverage as soon as possible. Developed countries want binding coverage as soon as possible. While developing countries are of the opinion that they should have restrictions as per their strength and weaknesses. As per their strength and weaknesses on these MNCs. On these MNCs. Particularly with the increasing network products. Particularly with the increasing network products. Increasing network products. In bracket you can write network products are those products which are having its components of material and services from various countries. In fact, India is now also trying to be in the network product market, particularly in the assembling part, because we know that we have that labor force. China was in the assembling. We also want to be in the assembly line productions, as you call, on the mass scales. And we want to produce those things because whatever we are doing an assembly line, that our clients are not developed countries. Our clients are middle range countries. We want developed countries to be our client, and for that we need to work upon certain things. In fact, if anyone interested and want to read last year's economic survey, means 2019-20 economic survey, booklet 1 came up with a very good chapter on network products. I think worth reading, at least in the introductory part, where they had given what is network product, what is the strength of China, where we are lagging and how we can compete with that. So that's how we got mode 3. And in mode 4, India and China are together. As they have the skilled population. I said that in a lighter mode. Don't take it very personally. Hum do hamare do wala thing. So that's how, because when we got these types of, now you can say that as of now, there are baseline guiding principles only in service sector. Baseline guiding principles only in service sector. Is that clear? Now you can write one more thing here in very brief, and that is called safe harbor rule. Understand what is the safe harbor rule? Safe harbor rule is nothing but we are promoting our own people who are in other country to come and operate from India. That will increase our mode 1 thing, and that's what is something I've already discussed about it, so there is no point of going again. I have already discussed it while discussing balance of payment. Remember that what is safe harbor rule and so and so. But safe harbor rule is also a matter of concern in this WTO discussion. So in one line you can write that I have discussed it in balance of payment. I hope you can recall it. In balance of services, we have talked about it. You can write safe harbor rule is another concern, particularly in mode 1, cross-border services. So that's how we got services sector, right? Before I move further, I want your consent that it's clear to all of you, and if any confusion, anything, because I think I missed a few questions if there is anything. Is that clear to all of you? Then we can move further. And that is trade related to intellectual property rights, or TRIPS issues as we call it. So it's clear? All right. Yes, and that's what exactly Shivam is referring to, that economic survey report. And that's perfectly all right, that we actually can create a lot of job and can increase our say in the global market. Fine. Now when it comes to IPR, let's understand first intellectual property rights, what it means. IPRs. What exactly IPRs are? So, Ghalib wrote something. You know, the famous writer, the poet Ghalib, he wrote something. Premchand wrote something. Shakespeare wrote something. Picasso made a painting. Someone designed a program. Someone made a design, industrial design. Someone wrote a book, and so, right? Don't you think it's their own intellectual work? And that intellectual work should be respected. That's how we got the concept of intellectual property right. So what is IPR? IPR is nothing but anyone who has used his own imaginative intellectual faculty to create something should belong to that fellow. This idea is for the first time was popularized in the modern time. Look, everything we are referring to the modern time. Otherwise, people may debate it was there in the past and so on. So I'm just saying in modern time. In modern time, it dates back to the famous Paris Conference of 1883, followed by Bern Conference 1886. It was Bern Conference particularly, Paris Conference and Bern Conference, where we realized that intellectual property rights should be respected. In fact, you might have noticed whenever I say something, I tell you the resource. If you were listening me carefully, I have tried. If I said anything, I told you this paper, this book, this survey, it was mentioned. I'm trying to give intellectual property respect to them. It is something which should be there, that if I'm using that, I should be referring to them, or if anything, So intellectual property right initially was thought only in terms of acknowledgement, that at least you should acknowledge them. Little later it was said, if anyone is doing it for any commercial activity, as per agreement, some part should go to that fellow also. So as per agreement, there could be a time period, like let's say if I am a stand-up comedian, or if I am one who is singing a song, or if I am one who is, let's say, doing that kind of recital of the poetry and earning my bread and butter, and eventually I'm referring to the writers, I should give some share of my income to them. If, depending upon the agreement, what kind of agreement is. Similarly, if you are, I'm quoting from any book, or I'm using any book for commercial purposes, these kind of things. If not, this is called infringement. Infringement is there of the intellectual property right. So after the Paris Conference and the Bern Conference, we realized that intellectual property rights should be respected. They are as good as other things. The way you got piece of land, that is your property. Similarly, what you had created with your imaginative faculty, with your intelligence, with your what's called intellectual capacity is something which is your own. And that property should be also respected, like the land, like the other assets. In this regard, a major development was there in 1967 when we got at Geneva the famous WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. WIPO came up in 1967, and that created almost a clarity that how should be intellectual properties, how we should be treating them, what should be the ways out for it, what are various types, what should be done if infringement happens, and so on and so forth. So intellectual property rights. Now this intellectual property rights may refer to things like, generally we talk about copyright. Copyright means I have written something, I had made something which, if anyone is using, should not be using without my permission, and if getting for commercial gain, share should come to me and so on. So that's why in the books you might have seen this C sign. That means it is copyrighted. Means you should not copy it without the approval of the writer. Without the approval of writer. Then we got what is called patents. We have trademarks, TM. You might have seen this term trademark. If anywhere it is written like this, let's say XYZ TM, that means this is an image, this is an IPR, intellectual property of the fellow, and should be respected. Then we got industrial design. Then we got geographical indicators. If something which is particularly of that particular geography should be respected, like there are several things when we say basmati, when we say champagne, these are what? Geographical things. So whatever geographical indicators, that should be respected. So copyright, patent, trademarks, industrial designing, geographical, then even data. As you know, as somebody was writing very rightly, that it is data is called the new oil. This is the new oil of the today's world. So data and related assets, digital assets, what you can call as. Then any kind of say program is there. In fact, this is one of the biggest source with the developed countries now, because they are developing those software programs and all these kind of things. So if anyone is using, they should be respecting IPR and should be valued. If IPR is only acknowledged, that is something what you can say the classical view on IPR. If you say IPR should be acknowledged and paid, this is called commercialization of IPR. So these days the whole world is talking about commercialization of IPR. If I've created something, I should be paid for it. So this is how we got the series of it. WIPO clarifies. Now, the moment WIPO came 1967, and in Uruguay, this was one of the serious issue. Why it was a serious issue? Because generally what happens, intellectual property rights are overlooked, right? Many a time you might have seen, we are using pirated softwares, people are, in fact, I really wonder, if there anyone from WIPO, I don't know anyone, but if I was knowing anyone from WIPO, and if he was bragging in front of me, that boss, we are doing so much, I will definitely welcome him in the Karol Bagh to see the Xerox market here. I don't know whether they are giving any copyright acknowledgement to the sources, but look, that's how it is. And clearly indicating that we are overlooking. Infringements are very common in India. Very common in India. Obviously, let me tell you that I'm well aware of it. Some of you might be thinking that in one of the cases of Oxford University Press versus Delhi University case, the Honorable Court had said, if it is done only for sake of a student, not for commercial purposes, should be allowed. Because Oxford University Press filed a case against Delhi University, as some of the teachers from our fraternity, we distributed some Xeroxes in the class, and it was brought to their notice, so filed a case. that it's an infringement of copyright. So the court had said it was not done for commercial purpose. It was because kids cannot buy the book. So certain pages were distributed so that they can read it. So that's why in Delhi University, anyone from the University will be knowing now it became a new culture, giving Xeroxes. So it's perfectly all right because that saves some time. But then even if you see, when someone is doing for commercial purpose, at least copyright should be given to them. Whatever, I'll tell you in the challenges of IPR in India, one of the biggest challenges is this frequent infringement. And we don't have any monitoring agency for it. Maybe people are not aware. I'm not saying everyone is doing it with the wrong intentions. Maybe they are not actually aware of this provision. So this is how, when it comes to WIPO, WIPO was one which became a very important center, and the matter was brought to WTO also because it was a continuous discussion in General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, as we were knowing that this is the future. Intellectual property right is the future. Right, so keeping this in mind, if you commercialize it, this is the future. This is the new property people are going to have. As you know, data is the new oil, data is the new property. So keeping this in mind, the TRIPS issue was discussed, we got in Singapore, we got in Seattle, and finally some consensus was developed, you can say, in Doha, and subsequently we got what is called more clarity on this matter. So when we talk about TRIPS issue, one of the very significant matter is that what should be the safeguarding principles for the TRIPS, how we can make, what should be the binding rules, let's make clear on it. Then what should be done in cases of infringement, how the legal framework of the parent country, means from where the copyright was, parent country can impose its restriction on the destination country, means where the copyright was infringed. So all these things we are continuously working upon it. What was dispute in Doha should be understood clearly, that we got one thing, where, like let's say XYZ is the product, and we said we are patenting it. Nobody can copy it, right? We are patenting it. So that's how we got, you can call it product patent, that I patented this product now. Now, somebody did what? Somebody made something like XYZ dash with some cosmetic changes. Using slightly different process, they made some cosmetic changes. Now, it was like XYZ, but maybe cheaper, like, China has championed. This is called reverse engineering. What is reverse engineering? What they did, they purchased, let's say, a product of America. Their engineers took it to their home, opened every component. I think they have used a very good word for it. In India, we call it jugaad. And jugaad is an official term now. For your kind information, there's a book written by Silicon people from Google. It's a wonderful book. If you're a book reader, at least the first few chapters must be read. Jugaad is a very good book written by 3 of the people who are working with the Google. And in fact, now we are having an award also for this, coming from Google, for those innovators. Like you might have heard recently, we got that fellow rewarded who made a fridge without electricity from Gujarat. And these kind of things. So we have that. Jugaad is now official word in Oxford Dictionary. You know what is the definition? What is the explanation? They say a low-cost, frugal solution of a problem is called jugaad. It's an official term. And I think that book has come in various versions, Jugaad 1.0, 2.0, and so and so. Silicon Valley people has written, forwarded by Ratan Tata. So don't take it, that's something like jugaad, but China used a very sophisticated term for it called reverse engineering. So what they do, they took the thing, they opened it, and they saw the component, say, we can make it something, हम भी बना सकते हैं, ऐसा कोई बहुत मुश्किल नहीं है. They did some cosmetic changes and made something even much cheaper than the original. We realized that this is not going to help, this is violation of IPR, and that's how from product patent, we also got one thing called process patent. So what is process patent? The way it will be made. Not only the product, but the way it will be made is also a matter of concern. That also should be. So now we have product patents, we have process patents. That's how we got what is called this TRIPS. So in the TRIPS, we are First talking about product patents, we achieved it, be it copyright, patent, trademark, and so that what is the product that, and then we got in all these categories, right? Then we got process patent also. Process patent means the way it will be made. The way it will be made is also something which was brought. However, China was again ahead, and not only China, why to blame one country, various countries were doing, India is also no exception to it. So when we got process patent, they started doing something else. Okay, you have problem with the process, we'll use our own process, but we'll use your data. Particularly in pharma sector, this was very frequently seen in the pharma sector. What they did, let's say there is a particular composition of a medicine. My biology knowledge is not that good, so I am just, let's say for example, azithromycin, an antibiotic, azithromycin, having certain compositions into it, right? Now, you say that how you make azithromycin, that is yours, trademark is your, and so and so. So no problem. We just look at your data, that what you did, what kind of processing you have done, your research paper where you have published all that. And from there we got hint, and using that data we made something else, which was of the same impact, and so and so. Neither the product nor the process was compared. Pharma sector people, pharma is a promising sector, and intellectual property right is very important for developed countries in pharma. So they say data exclusivity also should be there. This is called TRIPS Plus. So TRIPS Plus is data exclusivity, that there should be data exclusive to the producer. So whenever a company is now getting patent, it is not only patenting the product, the process, but also the data. So if you're using the data, you should create your own research. Let's say vaccine. In vaccine, obviously they might have done some research. From the research they got finding, they used the process and they made the medicine. Now, you also saw their research, you got some conclusion, you used own or process and you made the medicine. So they say even data should be, means do your own research. If you're taking my own research, you should pay intellectual property right for it. This is called TRIPS Plus, particularly in pharma sector. In pharma sector, we are talking about it, but gradually it is coming in software business also. TRIPS Plus, where we are looking the same thing, that from the research, what conclusion has been drawn, you also getting similar conclusion and making something else out of it. So now the data is also exclusive. They say data exclusivity also should be there. Now, that's called TRIPS Plus. So in the TRIPS Plus, data exclusivity, in 2017 ministerial conference, we were highlighting upon, in fact, that is here UPSC has asked, and very basic question, TRIPS is related to something like that. So intellectual property in WTO, means very commonsensical question, but you should be little aware of that TRIPS Plus was, is particularly about the, now this clearly shows that something was being cooked. In fact, I often believe, I'm not believing into what is called any kind of conspiracy theory, but it looks that this kind of preparation says either they got some hint that in future this kind of requirement might be there. That's why the moment we got these things, look, when the TRIPS was given and the TRIPS Plus was granted, developing countries were worried. They said, boss, a situation might arise where now we have to pay huge amount to you in the name of your data, in the name, let's imagine, in 2017, we were not knowing that COVID situation kind of thing may come. What if there was TRIPS Plus only? Even if India was doing any research about these COVID vaccine, we could have paid lumpy amount to those companies who were ahead in the research, right? So when the TRIPS was given, that time we got a provision, and that was called TRIPS flexibility. This was the victory of developing countries. TRIPS flexibility. So while TRIPS was victory of the developed countries because they are going to have an edge on it from software to other things, TRIPS flexibility was the victory of developing countries. What is TRIPS flexibility? TRIPS flexibility says if there is any unforeseen situation, any calamity, any rare situation, an emergency situation, we can violate TRIPS. The TRIPS norms can be violated. And without even taking permission, we can make the things. Let's say medicine. We can make medicine even without taking permission from the mother company. This is called compulsory licensing norm. You might have heard a lot in the vaccine these days. Compulsory licensing is what? That we will not take permission. Please don't go with the term, it might be a little confusing. Compulsory licensing provision means we are not bound to take license approval from them. We can produce even without their approval, if the matter is critical, if the matter is serious. I think as developing countries have already done it, that's why in vaccine matter we said let's go for TRIPS flexibility, and for the first time TRIPS flexibility was used when countries can go for compulsory licensing. That means without license they can make vaccine. In certain matters IPR can be overlooked. So the TRIPS is another very important issue on which in WTO we are continuously working. Because obviously when it comes to TRIPS, this is going to be very important source in future, as we say data, as we say process, as we say. So earlier we were only talking about patents of the products, then we moved towards process patent, then we moved towards what is called the patent of the data, that is called TRIPS plus. However, when all these things were discussed, then only we talked about TRIPS flexibility, that trade related in investment in intellectual property matters, we will have certain flexibility also. If there is any extreme situation, calamity or emergency, intellectual property rights can be overlooked. In 2017, to bring international coherence with the changing norms in the TRIPS, India introduced its own IPR policy also. Altogether new IPR policy was introduced in India to make sure that our intellectual property rights are now in coherence with the global order, with the 7 basic principles. That's how we got intellectual property right in India. But before coming to the intellectual property right in India, which makes sense to be discussed here only simultaneously, maybe somewhere else you might be getting some more element of it, but here I will look from the intellectual property angle only. So, but before that, please do confirm me whether the things are clear to you or not, whatever we have discussed so far. In the response tab, you can tell me whether it's clear to you or not. So that's how we got TRIPS, we got TRIPS plus, we got what is called TRIPS flexibility. These 3 are the terms you should be aware of. Aditya is saying clear, Ansul is clear, all right, fine. So that's how we got trade related to intellectual property matters, TRIPS. We can quickly write about it. You can write that trade related to intellectual property rights, TRIPS. TRIPS. In its simplest form, intellectual property rights refer to right over those intangible properties and their tangible manifestations which are outcome of imaginative and intellectual faculty, of an individual or community. In fact, off the record, I would like to say one thing. We can't write it, but in India, our negotiation is very strong on local wisdom. we have massive local wisdom, right? And globally, we are now trying that our local wisdom also should be acknowledged. There are massive local wisdom, like even, let's say, yoga. Why not we have copyright on it? This is very surprising when they have copyright on everything. Why India is not thinking on copyright of yoga or some? We have our local wisdom which can be utilized and so and so. Then you can write further that the idea of IPR was acknowledged at Paris Conference 1883. At Paris Conference 1883. Paris Conference 1883. 1883. Subsequently at Bern Conference 1886, it was acknowledged here a question is coming, very relevant question. Khushit Chopra is asking, sir, if something we are using traditionally and foreign companies are researching file on IPR, what can we do? We can take this matter to the WTO for sure. And this is a matter of serious concern. Because already they have tried, they lost the case. Like Basmati, they wanted to make a rice in Texas called Taxmati. So that was the point when this thing was asked. It is not the first time when any company tried to it. There are several things, our local wisdom. In fact, from Kerala, from Andhra, we will get that lady who got that Padam Awards. If you see that, she was so informed about local herbs and so and so. Geographical indicators should be respected. That's why we are talking about geographical indicators. So that could be a geographical indicator if the flora and fauna is found in that area. So, but this is where we have to be very careful. There are a lot of local wisdoms, a lot of local wisdom India is having. India and China, particularly India, China, Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, or I can say the entire Asia that way, is having massive local wisdom. We all are fighting for it in WTO. We are making sure that this must not be misused. Because there are several things which they can try upon. In fact, there has been unfortunate stories. I don't know how far that is true, or I'm not a jury to pass a comment. But I have heard that it was not the original paper of Newton. It was perhaps Spinoza who has, Leibniz and Spinoza who has talked about that so-called Principia Mathematica. Then this blame has come several times to several people. Not everyone is hardy who can call Ramanujan to solve the answer, right? There has been the stories of stealing intellectual property rights and getting patented. That has been right from the beginning. This war of stealing intellectual ideas is going to be a very routine war. The community should be little aware about it, and that's why in India's IPR right, in IPR policy, we are now saying, let's make a repository of our local wisdom so that we know that what we have, and once we got recorded, it can be called as collective patent and we can show it. There are several things people are, when we have seen that, in fact, there has been various examples in India also where research was done and it reached somewhere else. I remember when I was a kid, I saw a movie also based upon that, Ek Doctor Ki Maut, which was actually talking about this kind of stealing of intellectual property. So it's there. You can't help it, Khushit. The only thing we have that we should be little alert about our local wisdom, and before the matter is gone beyond your reach, you should be bringing it to the international forum so that it cannot be misused. That's where we are trying to create awareness about IPR and its commercialization in Indian IPR policy. Fine. So you have written that it was introduced in Paris and then Bern. In Bern, right? The IPR were globally acknowledged. The IPRs were globally acknowledged. The IPRs were globally acknowledged globally acknowledged. In 1967, when World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, came in existence. WIPO came in existence. Headquartered at Geneva. Headquartered at Geneva. Headquartered at Geneva. These IPRs largely consist of issues related to copyright, issues related to copyright, trademark, we have written it, copyright, trademark, patents, trade secrets. Yes, that's also there, trade secrets, right? I don't know whether you're knowing it or not. It's funny. I really, when I read it, I was bound to, what do you call, LOL. And now look, this is funny. You know, the Coke owner, I think there are two of them, the Coca-Cola company. They don't travel together because they have some trade secret. God knows what is that. Trade secret. They fear that what if both of them die together. I really don't know what exactly they are doing in that product. You know, the only thing when I think little on negative side, that are they adding some kind of addictive material so that people from top to bottom are addicted to that stuff. Yes, there has been blames when US, you know what, the way you fought for salt tax, the American Revolution revolved around sugar tax. I don't know whether you have read American Revolution or not. And now it's established fact that American sugar, that means the British sugar which was sold in America, was something which was having some addictive element into it. Some addictive material was added into that so that Americans were getting crazy about this sugar. That's an established fact now. In fact, that's how we got sugar. India and America has very similarity in their revolution. The only thing is about violence and non-violence. So in Boston, there was a meeting on that, and that's how they started opposing the sugar tax in America. In American Revolution, you might be knowing little about them. That's how the two of the taxes which they opposed was sugar tax and the stamp tax. I think this is where Gandhi got that inspiration, salt tax and these kind of things. Maybe because he was a well-read man for sure. So whatever, but sugar tax was a big history. You can search it, and there is a famous saying that sugar is addictive because of the kind of material they have added. There was, in fact, and that has been very UK thing. UK had got an opium policy for China. China could not grow in early 20th centuries because in various food items, opiums were added, making them addictive to these products. So they have gone with these unfair means. It's, I think that line is very right. The world is not full of roses and that what is called rainbows. It's a nasty place. You might be knowing that famous quote of Rocky. That's to some extent makes sense. People had been treacherous. If you see in history, particularly those big traders. But that does not mean trade is wrong. If somebody got a wrong intention, that act is not wrong, trade is not bad, trade should be there, but these kind of malpractices or malified intentions should be condemned. So it has happened, we have the history of it, that, so that's called trade secret. Like KFC, people don't share their recipe. They say it's something trade secret, what we add into that. So trade secrets, that's why generally in country like India we don't talk, if you see our IPR policy we only say trademarks, but there are countries who talk about trade secrets also. As we are talking about here WIPO, we have to refer to that. So trade secrets, trademarks, patents, geographical indicators, geographical indicators, This is what I'm talking about. In IPR, we are saying, Vaibhav has asked that, traditional knowledge digital library, because once we got it digitalized at one place, we will have our ready reference to present our case that this is our local wisdom. We need to know our local wisdom to get restored. Then geographical indicators, industrial design, layout design, domain related data and digital assets, digital assets, At WTO, particularly in Doha round, the TRIPS issues were raised, where it was said not only the product patent, but also the process patent, that means how the product is made. Should be covered. Within TRIPS, and it should be having binding coverage from 2005. So it should be binding from 2005. Binding coverage, it should be having binding coverage from 2005. Binding coverage from 2005. Further, in 2017, TRIPS Plus came in binding coverage. Where not only the product and the process, but associated research data also should be subject matter of IPR. Particularly in pharma sector. You can write one example, particularly in pharma sector. For example, a company conducted a research. And then followed a particular process to make a medicine. In that case, not only the medicine and the process, will be subject matter of IPR, will be subject matter of IPR, but at the same time even the research data should be considered exclusive, should be considered exclusive. Under TRIPS plus, under TRIPS plus, TRIPS plus. I hope it's clear now. Now you can give heading TRIPS flexibility, TRIPS flexibility, TRIPS flexibility, TRIPS flexibility, TRIPS flexibility. When at Doha round 2001, TRIPS was discussed. TRIPS was discussed. Developing countries were worried, and that worry was not unwarranted. Developing countries were worried that in emergency or unforeseen situations, emergency and unforeseen situations, TRIPS binding could be extra burden on the countries in tackling situation, could be extra burden on countries in tackling situation. In tackling situation. That is why it was highlighted that in case of unforeseen situations and emergencies, in case of unforeseen situations and emergencies, countries may overlook IPR, may overlook IPR, provided justifiable, may look IPR provided justifiable. Justifiable. This provision is called TRIPS flexibility. Under this, there is a clause of compulsory licensing, which means even without the approval of IPR owner, even without the approval of IPR owner, license can be issued for production. In bracket you can write this TRIPS flexibility has been utilized. This TRIPS flexibility has been utilized. This TRIPS flexibility has been utilized in the COVID vaccine cases. COVID vaccine cases. COVID vaccine cases. Fine. So that's how we got TRIPS. Now let's take a small break here. On the other side of the break, we'll understand what is there in technical barrier to trade and SPS measures, and a little about what is there in India's IPR situation. Fine. And then we'll move towards, so this was about WTO. Obviously there could be several other things, but I tried to cover as much as ground possible so that you got understanding. Focus was more on understanding rather than giving you the factual details per se, because questions are based on understanding. Now once we are done with this, then we'll move toward what is called the infrastructure part, which is the last discussion in our leg. So we'll see what is there in infrastructure, particularly what is this in energy, road, railway, ports, what has been done, why energy is so critical, and other dimensions, right? So a small break. On the other side of break, we'll continue from here. Thank you. All right, so welcome you all again. If anything to ask, anything? Anusha is asking here one thing, sir. The UNCTAD website is showing 15 countries granting GSP. Can you please look into this fact mismatch? All right. I'd like to say one thing. This is not fact mismatch in a way, and that's why I am continuously saying to you all that cross-check the things here and there also. You can say that USA was the one who gave the concept, and European Union cannot be called as a country that way. But then even if you want, you can write it 15, no problem, right? You can call it 15, you can call it, because European Union is the club of confederation of the countries, that way. So heads, when you say, you can say 15 heads. But it's okay, you can call it 15 countries, it's one of the same thing, all right? But good, With respect to Mode 4, Anusha has asked again, with respect to Mode 4, can we have a brief discussion on brain drain problem that India is facing? Good, you thought well. That's a good question. I should say that when it comes to brain drain, the term brain drain, we all are knowing, refers to when our talent going outside, right? Look, as we are going to a global world, what we want that this brain drain was more a concept of, you can say, the early, what you can say, 20th century or the early 21st century. It was the concept of 20th century and the early 21st century. In fact, nowadays we have a new argument. Will Kimlicka has started that argument that we are getting a we all are moving towards, now we are transcending national boundaries. We are now moving towards global citizenship. There's a new concept coming called global citizenship. So in that, if let's say from one country when brain is going, and from other country with this same magnitude, the brain can come to the country, I think the country is not in the losing situation. So it might be significant only when the brain is going outside and the other brains are not coming. That is why in the cross-border terrorism, when we are saying cross-border labor management, what we are saying that let's make sure that labor force are freely moving from one place to another. As of now, as the norms are not that easy, like let me give you a practical example to make it more clearer. To be honest, if tomorrow Harvard says or Cambridge says, come and teach in Cambridge, and we will for 2 years we'll take you as subordinate, and after that we'll give you the post of teacher or something like that. Even I'm ready to be a librarian for 2 years, honestly speaking. Not because that I'm not patriot, but I know what Cambridge may offer after 2 years, right? That's why. Now, this is one situation where the brain drain is clearly visible. I'm not saying that I am talented brain, but let's take an example for sake of understanding. So I am really ready to go for there, even to work as librarian for 2 years, if they say that they will give me a professorship after that. 5 years even I can wait, because I know that after that what kind of exposure and what kind of student and what kind of quality research I can pursue. That's one thing. That's brain drain. Now think of another situation, that I have what's called agreements with Harvard, Cambridge, various institutes, and they say stay in your university, and from here you can come on and off for the topics. Definitely I will prefer the second situation than the first. This is where the brain drain problem will not come. So I hope with this example I can explain you that if the movement is easier, Even I would like, because why I would like to have to stay in Cambridge. Cambridge may attract, the campus may attract you for 1 or 2 or 1-2 days or years. At the best, 1 year, 2 year. After that, you will feel alienated, that your people are not around, your culture is missing. It's very natural of the. So, brain drain comes with the cost also. Those who are going there, that's why Ravenstein, a noted demographer from UK, has given a detailed idea that the cost of brain drain to the migrant. So even they are suffering there, let's say this way. If the option given that you can move on and off, so there are people, why not to have a cosmopolitan labor movement, that I am staying in India with my family, I am having standing agreements with several universities whenever I feel like, whenever they feel like, we have what is called gig arrangement. I've been doing this gig arrangement. A gig arrangement is where the labor and the employer, they are in unconventional position, that both have more than one option. So they might have more than one teachers for the same subject. I might have association with more than one universities, and the agreement itself should be considered visa on arrival. So brain drain is actually emerging because of the lack of cross-border labor management. I hope Anusha is clear to you, and that's a good question. I hope it's clear. And I hope this is clear, that whether you call it 15 country or 13 country, where different stands can be taken. Shubham is asking, sir, can we say that IPR enhances the greed for private property, which is somehow not good for underdeveloping economies and also against the concept of global village, which itself drawn by Western world? Look, IPR enhances the greed for private property. Definitely is not good for underdeveloping countries, because they have to pay more now. That's for sure. With the binding coverage in the trips, now mobile became more expensive, medicines became more expensive, and the intellectual property is going to them. This is an ethical issue. I think I'm not the right person, Subham. It does not mean I'm unethical. Perhaps my logic is not that critical and that strong. Maybe your ethics teacher can tell you better that how this ethical dilemma can be taken. It's an ethical dilemma. In one hand, anyone can say, boss, I had made it, it's my intellectual property, I should get money for it. On the other hand, somebody can say that is something which is creating an unnecessarily greed, and the people who are already poor have to pay more for it. Now, this is an ethical dilemma. This is for sure an ethical dilemma between the individual and the collectivity. So that is always there, and that's why I say this is an ongoing thing. This problem, this dilemma will be there. I think that's why we got scope for TRIPS flexibility kind of thing. So maybe underdeveloping countries can negotiate more, that unless until we are reaching to that threshold. I told you in WTO we talk about negotiation. So they may negotiate that unless and until we are reaching to that threshold, these concessions could be given, or there could be different IPR tariff for us, and so and so. But that is a matter of negotiation. That's one part of the question. The second part of the question, when it comes to the whole idea, as I'd like to say that intellectual property right must be acknowledged. That even I believe it should be acknowledged, because that is the new domain. That's the new domain, and we should be also making sure that the countries are not misusing these tactics. So it should be, we should develop that kind of knowledge society worldwide, as Michael Foucault call it, that let's have knowledge society. Michael Foucault is a famous name, and he says very rightly that, if we got that kind of society which can create pressure on the countries, that intellectual property right in this is justifiable or this is not justifiable, perhaps can make more clarity on this. But whatever, obviously the underdeveloped countries are paying the cost of it in various ways. Even you pay the cost of it. Whatever mobile you are using, there are several softwares which you never use, yet you have already paid the money for it in the name of IPR. So we are facing, no doubt about it. When it comes to the concept of global village, as I told you, that global village is something which is a term that the entire world is interconnected, but it does not saying that there is no dominance and dependence. So it is only a geographical concept, global village. It is not a philosophical concept that there should not be dominant and there should not be dominance. Fine. Akhilesh is asking, sir, if TRIPS flexibilities was there, why India and South Africa recently insisted US to waive off IPR with regard to COVID vaccine? Uh, Look, we are collectively talking about India is in COVID diplomacy. India is saying that let's have a collective pool at one place. Like WHO is doing what? The countries who can produce vaccine and the countries who can require vaccine. That's how we have divided the world into two. How much of total pool we are having of the vaccine and how much of the total requirement of the vaccine. India has taken the lead and many countries are joining. We are saying that, there should be complete waiver off into every dimension in terms of vaccine production so that we can make sure that vaccine is reaching. So TRIPS flexibility comes with certain conditions. Here we are saying let's have a complete pool. Maybe in future, if it works, might be we get one common name, one common packaging, and across the globe, as per WHO recommendation, could be distributed, like the way it was done in the days of Red Cross. So we have to wait and watch that's what is called vaccine diplomacy. We are working on it, and India has taken a lead on it. Though India will be in the loss because we are producing a lot of vaccine, but we are taking a humanitarian phase here, and we want that it should be reaching to each and every one ASAP, right? Fine. All right. Fine. So this is how we got now. When it comes to India, though India right from the beginning, we got our Patent Act, we got our Copyright Act, Geographical Biodiversity Act 2002, India has been very alert to the intellectual property matters. That is for sure, there is no doubt about it. Now, we got one IPR policy 2016 applicable from 2017. Now, what is this IPR policy? If you see, I have taken directly you to this IPR policy has been promoted by Department for Promotion of Industries and Internal Trade, DPIIT. I hope you are knowing this department. If not, you should be knowing. This department for promotion of industries and internal trade, let me see how many of you are knowing. It produced one very important index also. Who can name me? Who can tell me which index they produce? Very important department which you should be aware of. Under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Ministry of Commerce and Industry, very important ministry. Under that, we got Department for Promotion of Industries and Internal Trade, what is called DPIIT. Anyone? Which index they prepare? Very important index. Chalo, hint. Office of Economic Advisor is under this. Index of Industrial Production? No. Index of Industrial Production is by MOSPI. Something related is there, what is called core industries, that is coming from there. 8 core industries data they provide. Alright, but you were closer. I know you have not revised. When you revise, look, if you go on their home, you can see that now. So if you see that they are providing one very important, alright, CVM came up, WPI, good. The same one, the same department, that's how you can recall. That's the only intention. I was not for the quiz. I just wanted to make sure that you can recall this, that who issued that national IPR policy. Now you can easily recall. And that, it was the same one which issues the WPI. That is, please be careful. WPI by DPIIT, Office of Economic Advisor. CPI by MOSPI. In MOSPI, we had earlier CSO, NSO, that has been merged into one to be called as NSO. Now we call it NSO. NSO does. IIP data comes from MOSPI, NSO. However, the 8 core industry data come from them. That's how it is. Good. Now, when it comes to national policy, IPR policy, the objective of it was Rachnatmak Bharat, Abhinav Bharat, Creative India, Innovative India. It has come up with 7 major things. Let me show you that. So I hope you have seen the ministry, that which ministry does it. And in India, we had been very alert right from the beginning. In 1950s itself, we made a provision as per WIPO guideline. We further changed our provision. Then we got Patent Act and so and so. But if you see in 2016, applicable from 2017, when we got this IPR policy, it was primarily focusing upon no, not yet. It's a wonderful document. That's why I wanted to show you all the 7 points which we have. All right. Leave it, no issues. Can I connect it with the computer? Which computer is connected? We can. Just a second. All right. So this is how we got when we say National Intellectual Property Right Policy. The title you know was Rachnatmak Bharat, Abhinav Bharat. Creative India, Innovative India. Obviously, the earlier pages are the concerned ministers and their statements. We should be going directly to the introductory part. Wonderfully written. What it says, look, whenever we talk about any policy, it got a vision statement. Vision statement says that we are trying to provide creativity and innovation which is stimulated by intellectual property for the benefits of all. The idea is very clear that whatever advancement is there in science and technology, art and culture, traditional knowledge, biodiversity, we should be making sure that we are getting benefited, and that is helping in the progress. Mission statement says very rightly, please develop this habit. When you look at the policy, try to understand what the vision statement is saying and what is the mission statement. Vision statement, what we want to achieve. Mission statement, how we are going in phase manner on that. So what it will do, it will stimulate a dynamic, vibrant and balanced intellectual property rights system. that will foster creativity and will focus on enhancing access to healthcare, food security, and environmental protection. 7 objectives were identified. The first objective was outreach and promotion. IPR awareness. We are making sure that people are aware of the IPR and so and so. In fact, that's where we got the caption Creative India, Innovative India. Look, as I told you that we belong, knowledge society term is there. Michael Foucault had talked about a lot, and nationwide program of promotion should be launched. We are looking into that how we can make people aware about intellectual property right, that what it is, what it encompasses, where the chances are, and so and so. Moving towards every section, public, private. In fact, R&D has to be promoted, because for innovation, research and development is something which is the key. So R&D has to be promoted, industries, academia, everyone. Objective 2 is generation of IPR. This is something which is very important, that we want more and more IPR created. That's why we are talking about Atal Tinkering Lab to what is called Atal Innovation Mission, and promoting private sector in R&D. The idea is that so that we are creating more and more IPR. So generation of IPR. Objective 3rd is, this is very significant, that we should develop a legal and legislative framework. Because the problem in IPR in India is that when we talk about IPR, we don't have that proper legal framework, and people are not aware, and even the proceeding is something very slow. Because of that, infringements are very common. So legal and legislative framework has to be prepared with effective IPR laws, where the balance of interest of right owner with larger public interest. In fact, while answering to your question, when somebody has asked that, and I have said that we have to strike the balance. This is what we are trying. Owner's right also is right, and then public interest is also. We should be striking the balance into that. So that's how we got, and the existing IP law in India were either enacted or revised after the TRIPS agreement, and we are showing compliance with that. Then, now you know it, the objective 4 is administration and management, where we are trying to have what is called service-oriented IPR administration to make things easier for those who are filing any infringement or, anything related to the administration and management, so that, the different intellectual property rights are the cornerstones on efficient and balanced IPR system. So here the point is that we should be strengthening the service-oriented IPR administration, so that they are proactive and reaching to the needy, whatsoever is needed. Here, look, DPIIT made a cell for IPR promotion and management, CPAM. This is important for us. The CPAM is been there, that is cell for IPR promotion and management within this ministry. So don't get confused. DPAM is something different. In Ministry of Finance, we have a department called DPAM. That's a different thing. Here we are talking about CPAM. CPAM is cell for IPR promotion and management. Then objective 5 is commercialization of IPR. That is another very important, that we should be so that we get the value of IPR through commercialization. Objective 6 is enforcement and adjudications, to strengthen our judiciary system as for the better enforcement of these IPR things. And then if you see objective 7, that human capital development, so that we can make human capital, we can create that kind of resource for IPR. These 7 things are which are very important for the IPR development. Not a surprise, I think, since 2016, question some or the other way has been asked more than 2 times in mains. So if you see 2-3 times, almost every year you can say average question is being asked, because IPR is our strength. We are working on innovation. In fact, that's why to promote innovation, Niti Aayog is coming forward, having, in education, you will read about it in social issues though, that how we are having Tinkering Lab, Atal Tinkering Lab, Atal Innovation Mission, and in higher education, Meru is there, which is working on it. So we have now multidisciplinary education universities. These kind of things are there so that we can create more and more IPR. In higher education, as per the new education policy, we made one primary regulator now. There will be one primary regulator, and there will be one agency which will create fund so that IPR can be promoted. That is in collaboration with Canara Bank. So that you will read in education sector, but in in general, if you see, we are working everywhere from industries to academics to other R&D centers to make sure that our innovations are increasing, IPR is increasing, because India has potential to have a sizable say in the world trips market. So keeping this in mind, we got a new intellectual property right policy. It should be viewed along with the promotion of innovations. Even recently, our Prime Minister, after this budget, has requested private sector, because as of now, as per Department of Science and Technology, DST, if you go on the DST website, you can get the data. As per DST, the maximum expenditure in innovation is still by the government. If we consider all them together, that is the government, the government-run universities and the centers. While the private people are not coming that much, if you compare with the developed countries like USA, where private companies like the Alphabet, and others, they are spending a lot of money in the research. So keeping this in mind, we are promoting our private sector. Prime Minister had made a special call to the private sector to come and participate and to fund even universities so that research can be promoted. And that all will be now regulated by the Higher Education Regulatory Authority. So we have now one single authority, and we are going to have one funding agency also for higher education, which will link industry and their innovation with the university research and all. So a lot of things are being done. The message is loud and clear that we would like to encash whatever our local wisdom is, how we can commercialize it, whatever our innovations are, because India is having that potential, no doubt. So that's how we got when we talk about intellectual property rights status in India. Here with the TRIPS, why I wanted to discuss this, because I think whenever you're revising TRIPS, you should be aware of that India was one among those countries who made its IPR laws immediately in line with the TRIPS guidelines. In line with the TRIPS guidelines, and we are looking into what are the major challenges to make people aware. Look, you have not to mug it up, it's very logical, to make people aware, to ensure that we are having more what is called commercialization, to make sure that people's participation is increasing, to make sure that we have a legal framework, to make sure we have better administration, to make sure that we are having what is called better enforcement and adjudication, and to develop human resource. So these are the 7 principles of IPR which we are trying to promote. And be careful whenever you're writing these kind of answers. In mains, I request you and develop this habit. Don't write flowery words. I told you several times that's not going to help. At least talk about the ministry. Wherever you're talking about health, education, do talk about at least the ministry. Which ministry it talks about, which is a central agency which is going to do that. And try to develop some facts and figures to substantiate whatever you're saying. So that's how we got when we talk about IPR policy in India. We can quickly write, so that we can move further. You can write quickly here. You can say intellectual property rights in India. Intellectual property rights in India, or IPR in India. In India, the intellectual property rights has been the integral part of the legal framework as we show adherence to human rights declaration. I won't go into that, but I may give you a running reference. There is International Declaration on Human Rights, 1948. I'm sure you have heard of it. Very famous declaration of human rights. We got United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, 1948. That talks about 3 generations of human rights. There are 3 generations of human rights. Article 27 in that talks about intellectual property rights. So that will be 2nd generation that way. So we have what is called 3 generations of human rights. Whenever you discuss human rights, you will discuss that. But as our constitution is showing adherence to what is called United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Article 27 is reflected. So I'm not going into those technicalities yet, but I'm just saying that India is showing commitment towards human rights. Human right Article 27 says that IPR should be respected. That's why India's legal framework has shown always adherence to the intellectual property rights. This is the line you have written. That's the meaning of it. If you want, you can write in brief that Article 27 of Human Right Declaration, Article 27 of Human Right Declaration refers to intellectual property rights. In India, since 1970, we have Patent Act. Since 1970, we have Patent Act, amended 2005. Amended 2005. Here only you can write, just as a reference, that this act is not clear about compulsory licensing. That's a challenge, because that was the time when we started TRIPS compliance, 2005. So it was amended accordingly, but it's not showing clarity about compulsory licensing. Then we have Trademark Act 1999, Trademark Act 1999, Biodiversity Act 2002, very famous one, Design Act 2003, to show compliance with WIPO guidelines. WIPO guidelines. In fact, there was a 2012 IPR also, but now we can say directly that in 2016, enforced from 17, in 2016, National Intellectual Property Right Policy, National Intellectual Property Rights Policy was introduced by DPIIT, the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, DPIIT, with the clear-cut objectives of Creative India and Innovative India. Creative India and Innovative India. Creative India and Innovative India. To promote Creative India and Innovative India, to promote intellectual property for all. To promote intellectual property for all in the fields of science and technology, art and culture, traditional knowledge, and biodiversity resources. With following 7 objectives. In one line we can write, with following 7 objectives. Following 7 objectives. First, IPR awareness, outreach and promotion. Outreach and promotion. To create IPR awareness among all. to create IPR awareness among all. Second, to stimulate the generations of IPR by fostering innovation. To stimulate the generation of IPR by fostering innovation. Third, to develop a legal and legislative framework, for effective IPR laws, balancing the interests of owner and the public interests. Balancing the interests of owner and public interest. And to be in accordance with TRIPS. In accordance with TRIPS. Next, to develop service-oriented administration and management. Service-oriented administration and management in IPR matters. To get, next, objective 5, to get the right value of IPR through commercialization. Right value of IPR through commercialization. Sixth objective is to strengthen the enforcement and adjudication mechanism. To strengthen the enforcement and adjudication mechanism or adjudicatory mechanism for combating infringements. And to develop, seventh is to develop necessary human capital. To develop necessary human capital for full utilization of potential. For full utilization of potential. Utilization of potential. Fine. So that's how we got these 7. And please, as I told you that it's very easy to remember. First, we have to promote our innovation and creativity. Second, obviously, how you can do that? If you are getting what is called funds and R&D to get what is called more IPR. Then what is needed, you should not have what is called better legal framework and management, better administration and management. Then you should have what is called more commercialization value of it. Then you should have what is called better adjudication, and you should have what is called better human resource. So this is very logical, but I really wanted it in front of you because I would be happy if at home you give some half an hour to this document, particularly the first page, and read it properly. Because I still believe that it has the potential to be asked in mains. It has not lost its potential despite the fact that it has been asked 2 or 3 times. Whenever the questions is asked, please start from the trips and connect this because most of the time what the students are doing, they are just only confining to whatever the policies. You should be at least talking about the major source. You should be talking about the ministry concern, and then you should be writing the key points. That's what makes your answer more what is called bureaucratic. So this is how when we talk about this IPR and as I told you that India had Patent Act 1970 modified 2007, 2005 as per the TRIPS norms. Then we got what is called Copyright Act, and we got what is called Biodiversity Act, we got Industrial Design Act. We have all those kind of things, but despite that, it was realized that we need a more integrated policy, and that's how it was definitely a milestone which was achieved in 2016. So that's the importance of it, and obviously you can view it in collaboration with National Education Policy, Atal Innovation Mission, Atal Tinkering Lab, and these kind of things. So that's how we got, maybe somebody somewhere in science sir also might discuss about intellectual property right, but his angle will be more from DST, Department of Science and Technology, what they are doing for the promotion of innovation and all. Here I have taken the economic side of it, that how we can get value of it, how we can make education so that infringement are combated and so and so. So this is how we got when we talk about intellectual property right in India. So this was about TRIPS. Is that clear? There's another thing. Let's quickly talk about small things are there in WTO. The next one is what you can say technical barrier to trade, or TBT. I told you that there are tariff barriers and there are non-tariff barriers. This is a kind of non-tariff barrier. So what does it mean? Let's understand an example. Technical barrier to trade, or TBT. Let's say, if I give all the time example of USA, let's say Australia. Australia say that we will buy the things from India. Perfectly all right. We are not having additional tariff and all, but they made certain clauses. They said that we can buy the things from India. Let's say they are saying, clothes, cotton. They say it should be 3-ply, and the 3-ply should be something where the company which has gone with the processing of it should be electricity based, not handmade, or should be handmade. Unnecessarily technical barriers has been created. Now they have right to create technical barrier, because obviously everyone would like that whatever product they are coming, that is coming safe, that is not coming in any kind of turbulence, not at the cost of human rights, and so and so. But what they said that we will only prefer that cotton which is coming only from mechanized machine, not from the yawning, because yawning means human right violation and these kind of things. Now we have the provision, because it has been seen that countries do manipulate these kind of things to provide some favor to their domestic what is called producers. Any country if you have objection on this, the matter can be taken under the ambit called TBT, technical barriers in trade. Anything it could be, in automobile sector, in any sector. Automobile is where it comes very frequently. Medicine is where it comes. So automobile, or anything which is otherwise not associated with the eating items, food items, then we use it. So when there is technical barrier to trade, if any country is of the opinion that this is unwarranted, the matter can be taken to a committee within the WTO that is called TBT Review Committee. So there is a TBT Review Committee which look into whether what the country had said, the special clauses they have made, whether it is justifiable or not. If that is not justifiable, like India had said recently that we will allow only from those countries with whom we are not having territorial land share. Territorial land share you have with Nepal, you have with what is called Pakistan and China. So Pakistan, Nepal, obviously out of question, it clearly indicates that you are targeting China. So China went to that and said this is something which is unnecessarily technical barrier. So what this TBT Review Committee does, it look into that whatever barrier they has imposed, whether it is justifiable or not. Justified, then they negotiate upon it, then they, and finally some solution is provided that, okay, this is the solution, right? So when we talk about these kind of technical barriers on trade, for that we have TBT Review Committee within it, and the matter can be taken to the committee and they will look into, and if the matter is not solved, then it might go into the dispute resolution also. However, when it comes to TVT, they proactively also keep an eye on these kind of specific norms which any country is producing in the ambit of technical barrier. And for that, they have 3 meetings in every year. In the whole 1 year, they have 3 meetings. And in those meetings, they get report from their representatives that is there any special provision made. If yes, they might proactively also, what you call in your legal term, suo moto, that would be wrong term here, but they may take proactive measure to get clarification from the imposing country. So if any country has imposed, which any other country is yet not reported, they proactively can work upon it. For that they have meetings 3 times in a year. So there is a TBT review committee which looks into these kind of unnecessarily technical barriers. The same is the case with the eatery items, and that is called sanitary and phytosanitary measures, SPS measures. So what they do, like say USA said we will buy the product from India only if it is organic. We cannot buy because whatever they are using is too much of urea, that is not safe for us, and they might be using like many a time it has happened that Indian mangoes are returned. They said that you are using carbide for processing, that is dangerous, and diclofenac issue came up. There are several things. Now, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Obviously, it is every country's right to protect their citizens. So they can determine what is good for their citizen, and that's their right. But there should be someone in WTO to determine their good is good or not. Whatever they are saying, is that right or not? Or is it something unnecessarily imposed? Something unnecessarily imposed, like you yourself doing it, but you don't expect from us. That kind of thing should not be there. So in the name of protection of the people, it should not be protectionism of the economy. I'm borrowing the same word from WTO. They have said in the name of protection of people, you should not be going for protectionism of your economy or your local producers. Any such matter which is related to the food items and so taken into the SPS. Like TBT, here also we have a SPS review committee. That committee looks into the matter and they try to resolve the whatever the dispute are coming. Countries have this right. In fact, for this, one more thing is being done that you should be aware of. In these 2 processes, we are expecting that every country should follow some international processes, some international standards. Like, let's say in India, we have FSSAI, which talks about Food Safety and Standardization Authority of India. FSSAI should follow international guidelines like Codex Alimentarius. We have Codex Alimentarius guideline following. Codex Alimentarius is international guideline which FAO also recommend, talks about that how much of toxicity in the food or radiation or biochemical or other carcinogenic element, what you call oncogenic element. So Codex Alimentarius make an international guideline. Our Bismarck, our FSSAI, we are continuously working on it to make sure that we are following in the international standard. This process, these committees ensure, and is called harmonization. So harmonization, when you read anywhere, it's a technical term. It means that it should be following international guideline. In fact, you might be reading or you might have read in GST, there is one HSN number. HSN number. In fact, today you do one thing, go at home and see any GST bill. You might see this HSN number, SAC number. These 2 are there. HSN is Harmonized System of Nomenclature and SAC is Service Account. So if you see, there is a number mentioned. So let's say HSN number is 1004. It might be of a particular thing, and this should be following the international guideline. Every GST bill provides that kind of thing. Generally, small bills don't give that data. However, now in this GST Council, they have said any value of more than a certain amount, say 5 crore and above, has to mandatorily make sure that they are following harmonized system of nomenclature. Harmonization is a technical word in WTO that says we should be following international guideline in terms of production, in terms of processing, and as you say, ISO guideline and so on and so forth. So that is how when we talk about technical barrier and SPS measure, in both we have review committee. All countries are having freedom to put this kind of restriction, but then there is a third party in WTO, these review committees, which examine whether the imposition is genuine or not. If the imposition is something which cannot be accepted because of its unwarranted technicalities, can be, they can ask that you have to withdraw it. So that's how we got this process of harmonization. That's how we got this process of ensuring that there are no unnecessarily technical barriers, or in the name of safety of food unnecessarily these kind of impositions are there. So that's how we got, when we talk about these non tariff barriers, right? Is that clear? If yes, we can write quickly about it. You can quickly write that, you can give heading non-technical barriers, non-technical barriers, non-technical, non-tariff barriers, I'm sorry, my bad, non-tariff barriers, non-tariff barriers. It refers to those kind of barriers, it refers to those kind of barriers, which are unnecessarily imposed, unnecessarily imposed, unnecessarily imposed to distort the international trade or to provide protectionism to domestic producers, protectionism to domestic producers, protectionism to domestic producers. It can be largely subdivided into two. First, technical barriers to trade, or TBT. Technical barriers to trade, or TBT. TBT. It refers to those technical barriers to non-food items, which may distort the trade. WTO clarifies that it is the right of every country, it is the right of every country to put certain restrictions for the welfare of their people, but they should be justifiable, and not with the intention. They should be justifiable and not with the intentions, to distort the trade. To look into any such matter, there is a TBT review committee. TBT review committee. TBT review committee to examine whether the specific provisions mentioned are justifiable or not. Justifiable or not. Second, you can say sanitary and phytosanitary measures or SPS measures. SPS measures. SPS measures. Sanitary and phytosanitary measures. It refers to food items and every country has the right to impose restrictions for health safety but if the restriction is unwarranted and non-justifiable unwarranted and non-justifiable, there is SPS review committee. SPS review committee to look into the matter. Now you can give a heading harmonization. Within this, harmonization, it refers to the practice of developing international standardization in product and process to ensure necessary safety. SPS and TBT recommend for it to every member country. Particularly SPS, recommend for it to every member country. In bracket, particularly SPS. That's how our FSSI is working in that, right? In food safety, you might be referring to FSSI, that's how it is. So when we talk about food security, we have the element. So this is how we got when we talk about this idea of WTO. One last debate, though not much in discussion these days, but it's there also. That's called TRIMS, Trade Related Investment Measures. It's simply the way we have discussed earlier, what it says that we must make sure that the countries are not giving unnecessary protectionism to their own investors or having aversion towards investor from a particular country. And for that we have category 1, category 2. So you can write in one line about it. The next one is trade related investment measures. Under TRIMS, trade related investment measures, under TRIMS, WTO ensures that no protectionism or aversion is practiced. No protectionism and aversion are practiced. In terms of investment options. In terms of investment options. Other than the policy restrictions. We can have policy restrictions like we have in category A, whenever government indent are done. If I say in India, though that will be a little technical, but when government, let's say India, government of India want to purchase chairs for their offices and all, there is mentioning of whether what kind of auction it is, category 1, category 2. Category 1, we have more definite quota for our own local vendors and restricted quota for, but that is in the policy, that is very clearly mentioned. So that's how we got when we talk about trips, trims and so and so. So this was in brief about WTO. I'm saying in brief because you might have sensed, I could have, we could have discussed, a lot about it. In fact, your questions were wonderful, I should say. And this is something which perhaps gives the boost so that we can discuss more. So this was about WTO, this was about international trade, balance of payment. We have discussed balance of payment. We have understood what are the dimensions, then what is World Bank, IMF, and WTO and other things. So this was the section, very interesting section. And as what we have discussed, I would like to say, there could have been several other things, but I was keeping your examination required in mind and tried to design the discussion that way. Now let's move towards something in the domestic economy. So we have discussed stock market, we have understood this. Now the next thing which I am assigned is the infrastructure. Another very significant thing, a lot of priority has been given by the government in form of national infrastructure pipeline. In infrastructure, as you see, from past 3-4 years, if I can say, continuous question, 2-3 questions are being asked. So I'll try that in those 3-4 questions which are asked in your mains, you get that edge over others. Because when it comes to writing infrastructure, people write very commonsensically. We expect some more technical, or you can say if not technical, at least more informed answer. So we'll try to understand, and for this again, economic survey provides a very good data. However, as the segregation is there, industrialization you have done already, so I won't get into that. I will confine the things only to the infrastructure. So what is there in infrastructure? What are the challenges? What is this national infrastructure pipeline? What is this national monetization pipeline? That is something which we'll be discussing in the next class about infrastructure, about energy, about railway, etc. And then we have to discuss also, which is half an hour discussion called, what are various investment models which are emerging these days. Why I'm saying half an, because obviously international investment we have already discussed in the name of FDI, FPI, etc. So now I'll confine on the models of it, that what is, when we say hybrid annuity model, what is Swiss challenge model, what is PFI model, and these kind of things. So these are the topics left. I hope that if we go a little with the pace, we can do it in one class. Otherwise, I will request coordinator sir to grant me one more class, right? So this is it for today. I hope the class was productive for you. Thank you.